We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Lawyers are all athunder at the appointment of a special master to President Donald J. Trump, former President Donald J. Trump, I should say. But what has created this anger amongst, let's be fair, more left-leaning members of the legal profession? Well, to help us once again, we're talking liberty with Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, constitutional attorney, and connoisseur of all things Courvoisier and crudité, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza. Welcome back to the show, Scott.
Cheers, Mark. Congratulations on your new prime minister. I hope it all works out for you.
Yes, everybody does obviously hope that the nation doesn't fall into a pit of despair, but who knows, politics as usual. So, Scott, let's take pity on these poor lawyers. It seems that the decision by Judge Cannon to grant the appointment of a special master to oversee the documents seized by the FBI has put our bejabbeted friends into a bit of a tailspin. Now, as a lawyer yourself, Scott, why do you suppose so many of your fellow bar members...
Do you have the term conniption fits over there? Do you know what that is?
We do have the term conniption fits. Yeah, why are they having conniption fits?
They have gone into conniption fits over this order. Mark, it seems to be a case of long tail Trump derangement syndrome. That's the only thing I can think of. Judge Cannon's order granting a special master in the Mar-a-Lago search warrant return issue case is a very mild order. If all you care about is that sort of like justice be done, right? Like following the law and the facts where you lead them, as I think our Merrick Garland Attorney General said. The only reason why you'd be so just beside yourself with upset, I think, is number one is really you are so emotionally involved in the destruction of Donald Trump that you can't stand any kind of pause or anything other than full steam ahead on that front.
The prosecution
and the
must be relentless.
That the desire to use this for political ends, and if that's sort of what the motive is, then this does pause that. So the November elections are coming fast upon us, and if you want to use the Justice Department mechanism, against Donald Trump to further political goals in November, well, that may be well frustrated by Judge Cannon's order because it may delay in time Justice Department actions against Trump. So
let's play a little whataboutism here, Scott, because I know how much the social media denizens love a bit of whataboutism. So just for example, if FBI agents had possession of documents from, let's say, Hillary Clinton, assuming she hadn't destroyed them all first, would the same lawyers be denigrating the appointment of a special master in her case?
One would think that they would be leading the charge to see that one was appointed, because the special master takes some decision making out of the hands of politicians and political rivals, or in this case, as I've alleged in the pages of Liberty Nation, an enemy. I think that Joe Biden's speech in Philadelphia lays out quite clearly that he and Trump are no rivals now, but he views Trump as an enemy to be destroyed. And all this does is say, well, let's just put an independent arbiter. I mean, Mark, one of the things that the Justice Department does when they take these search returns in, so all the documents and things that have gathered at Mar-a-Lago, is they went through an attorney-client privilege filter, which is to say that some attorneys from the Justice Department are looking at those things only to discover whether they're relevant, that Donald Trump might be able to say, this is attorney-client privilege and you can't see this. And those people are supposed to be walled off from the attorneys who are actually doing the prosecuting of Donald Trump. Now, we know that at least two different attorney-client privilege matters made it through that pass, okay? So they went, the DOJ lawyers who were assigned, by the way, top flight, their best they have, right? These are the people who they put on this case. They said, oh, no, this is not privileged, and they handed the documents over to the team who is designed to prosecute him, and they've now looked at attorney-client privilege documents because of the mistake that now it's no surprise that a cashier may make a mistake in favor of the store from time to time, but if they never make one in favor of the customer and it's always for the store, well, I think we we have something more there that's going on, and it's reasonable for Donald Trump's legal team and all people who are subject to Justice Department actions to ask for an independent arbiter to kind of view these things.
So what is the possible downside here for the DOJ, the FBI, if they have viewed articles that are considered by the special master to be attorney-client privilege, but these documents or notes have already been handed over? What's the recourse?
The recourse is to
Let's assume this is not about Donald Trump, just in general, for anybody. What would the normal
It depends on the scope
be?
of the violation. So
Okay.
part of an attorney's bill would be part of attorney-client communication, perhaps, because it indicated some of the work that was done. If that was disclosed, you could imagine that the damage to the client wouldn't perhaps warrant dismissal of the charges, for instance. That would be the extreme remedy, okay? And a lower remedy would be citing the one of the attorneys, making them pay money damages or something like that, or making sure that the attorneys, if it could be possibly done, couldn't then work on the case. There's a number of ways to craft a sort of a rebuke, but oftentimes for low-level violations of it, there wouldn't be, a real hammer thrown at the prosecution.
So, Scott, that's actually what I assumed. Now, obviously, I'm not involved in the legal world at all, but I assumed it would be either there's an extreme remedy, there's a common remedy, and sometimes, depending on the severity, it doesn't really get followed up too much at all. So my question would be, isn't it in the best interests of the Department of Justice that a special master be appointed to avoid any doubt?
Joe Biden has sworn himself to attack Donald Trump and defeat Donald Trump seemingly on all fronts with any accessible kind of, legal or otherwise tool that he may have available to him. They have all this Trump information now. It's a treasure trove. It's not like they raided some storage locker out in, Arkansas that was, waiting for review for presidential. This was his stuff, his desk, his passports, his medical information. By the way, you think maybe that got passed along? Do you think that's relevant to whether or not he would run for president or not? Confidential medical information that he has that, basically Biden allies and appointees at the highest level have. I think you're wrong about that. I think that they view it as total war, and that this all aids them having the ability to operate without oversight. That's kryptonite to them, Mark, because they have basically turned the law on its head to say that Donald Trump can't even object to the search because the documents that were ordered to be seized weren't his property. Now, that may be true, legally speaking, with respect to those documents, but the idea that a lawyer in America would say that a person whose home was searched by the FBI and raided didn't have the right to ask for some court oversight for that raid, and that people on the left, Mark, are populating it, that those objections are somehow not only just wrong, but also so far wrong. I saw an esteemed attorney say on Twitter yesterday that it was worse than the Dred Scott decision, which furthered chattel slavery in this country by a long time. So there's just so much derangement on the other side of this. It does kind of shock the conscience.
Just one more question. We have seen a lot of anger also leveled at federal district judge Eileen Cannon.
Yes, Trump appointee.
Well, I mean, that appears to be the issue here, Scott.
Yeah.
So very quickly, is she unqualified to have made
No.
this?
Here's where the anger comes from. The way that she structured her order, it's hard to appeal that. So the people who oppose Donald Trump, whether that's politically, electorally, in other ways, they were hoping that she would send down an order that would be easy to then run to an appellate court and try to get overturned and continue up the chain. But because the way that the special master order was crafted, it just becomes very difficult to appeal, and almost you can't. And so she defeated kind of one of their lines of attack against putting brakes on the process.
So law and the lawyers divided, Scott. Scott DeCosenza, thank you ever so much.
Cheers, Mark.
And that's almost all we have time for on today's episode of Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the country from coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'd like to take a brief moment to thank our special guests, longtime host of this here show, Tim Donner, columnist Jeff Charles, and Legal Eagle, Scott D. Cosenza, for taking the time to join us. And of course, as always, my thanks to you, the listeners, for being here with us as we dissect the irregular swamp happenings that guide and beguile the nation. For my parting shot this week, I'd like to leave you the words of the great physicist and thinker Albert Einstein. He once said, "The strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the determination of each citizen to defend it. Only if every single citizen feels duty-bound to do his share in the defense are the constitutional rights secure." Now, we go to the ballot box every year, every few years, and seek to elect leaders who will be our champions in defending the Constitution, the principles, and the values that matter to each of us. If our chosen political gladiatori wins, we rest on unearned laurels, assuming that the future, for the moment, is safe and secure. And if he should fall, we denounce the trouncing the unvanquished opponent applies to our values. And it seems to me that sometimes we're missing the point. Einstein certainly saw it, that elected leaders are not the chalice to carry the wine of liberty. We are. We carry it in our blood and we pass it on to our young and hope that we teach them well enough that they too can pass on the true birthright of living as free men and women. If we continue to look solely to high offices of power, then I fear we're already losing. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.